Hello everyone, it's Farket here, and in this video I'm going to show you things that I think should be in Sons of the Forest. The first thing is nerfing headshots or making boosts to melee weapons. When headshots became a thing in the forest, it kind of overshadowed melee weapons because you could one-shot enemies by just shooting them in the head. The cannibals, of course, not the mutants, which made melee weapons fall out of favor a lot. I mean, it would be unrealistic to make an arrow through the head not kill a cannibal, though also smacking a cannibal with an axe like 20 times and have them still standing is still also unrealistic. Maybe they could have body placement shots, and if you hit them in the head with an axe, maybe that should be enough to take them down. I don't know how to sort this problem out, but it just made bows too overpowered. The main reason I stuck with melee weapons was because I found headshotting enemies all the time was just boring. I needed to spice it up a little bit. We have seen footage of cannibals having their arms cut off. It suggests to me that this is a thing. I think my main concern is that we haven't seen any melee combat yet, so I have to wait and see. The next thing is cave textures, and I'm just going to show images of minerals of caves that I found, and I don't know much about caves or minerals. I'm not a geologist or a cave expert, though the reason I'm saying this is that this would make it so much easier for players to navigate around caves if the textures look different. In the forest they all look like limestone. I think that's what they are, and it just makes it so difficult to navigate in caves. I think taking advantage of using different textures without going too wild, you can make it realistic and much easier for the player to navigate. The next thing is I want an option to remove shadows. Now this probably doesn't bother many people, but shadows do affect performance, so having the option to turn it off if you're on a laptop or a console is probably a good thing. There's not many games you can completely turn the shadows off on though. The main reason I want to be able to turn off the shadows is if I'm trying to get a good shot of something I've made for a video, like this log cabin, which was extremely difficult to make because it was a prefab. It's hard to get a good shot with the shadows, whether it's the trees or cliffs or where the sun's position's at. It's a real pain because you can't really create artificial light in this game. Even if there's ability to turn off shadows with console commands, I'd prefer that. If any of you have ever gotten decent at taking photos of your camera or your phone, you know that dark areas and shadows are bad. It makes it difficult to work with the photo. The next thing I'd like them to add is a in-game feedback system. I think for the forest they only use Steam discussions for that, though I think that is more catered to the vocal minority. I am not a person to go on a Steam discussion and vocalize my frustrations or report a bug. It's just not what I do. But if it's in-game and I can just quickly press a button like in Planet Crafter and just type a quick thing to let them know of a bug, which I did 4 times when I was playing that game because that game is in early access and I need to breathe because I'm running out of oxygen. It's very useful for a person like me because I don't want to have to go onto another platform. Being able to do it in game is very useful. I think Subnautica had it as well, but I don't like talking about that game. I really want this feature because this is the type of feature I think the silent majority will use. And another issue I have with Steam discussions is they've got a Reddit vibe, and I really don't like Reddit. One thing I want them to add, well, not so much add, but to be able to provide players with suggestions for increasing performance with building bigger bases. Now, I'm not too familiar with development of games, though I think it might be on a simple premise of the more you have, the less performance you're going to have. Though I think that the developers could probably give us some more insight into what would cause more lag or performance drop. I'm sure they're implementing things that would help performance of the game, though we'll have to wait and see, I guess. There was something that I believe was added to 7 Days to Die. When you made a change to the game, like you built a structure or changed the terrain, it loaded into the map so you could see it from really far away. It didn't render in when you got close to it. I'm not sure if that's possible for the forest, but that is such a cool feature. It might lead to more long-term lag. When you arrive at your base for a zipline, you don't have to experience 15 frames per second while your base loads in. The next thing I would like them to add is a description for all the graphical options. I'm not that savvy when it comes to graphic options. Like, I don't even know the difference between TXAA, SMAA. I don't know what they mean. I usually put my cursor over it and read the benefits. It's good when a game will tell you what effects it will have. Like, for instance, Arc does an alright job because it will say something is expensive, which means it's very taxing on your system. I think Stranded Deep does have some brief description, but even just listing what's the best one, because you got low, medium, high, that's obvious, but though, like I mentioned before, TXAA and SMAA, I don't know what the difference is. I don't know what's better. If you've got a high performance system, you want the best. I don't want to have to Google it. I haven't known these things for over 5 years and I still can't be bothered to Google it. I know the onus is probably on me to go and find that information, though a few quick words in a sentence could go a long way for people like me. The forest also has some unique stuff like chromatic aberration in that, which I've never seen in another game. I did Google that because I was actually interested because I'd never seen that in another game, but that's actually a bit of a negative effect that happened with cameras back in the older days, I think. But some people like to add it for an effect. The next thing is I'd like to see a colorblind mode, just because there are people that struggle with survival games. I've mentioned this before in my Q&As, but I do think it should be a thing. The next thing I would like to see is more weapon slots. Now the forest gives you 4, which really isn't enough. I'm hoping they do expand upon that. I've heard on PlayStation that people only get 2 weapon slots, and that hurts my soul. Those poor people. Having 4 is painful enough, but having 2 must be just so much worse because there's too many useful items to stick in those slots. Most games use that number system down the bottom on the bar, and they go from 1 to 0. Well, 1 to 9 then 0. So we've got 10 options. I'm not saying we need that many. 6 would be nice, I would think. Another thing that I would like to see is an adjustable HUD. Now this goes back to ultra wide, but if you ever use ultra wide, all your HUD status effects almost always go off to the side. So they are actually out of your line of sight most of the time. Though ultra wide does give you an advantage because you can see more, the disadvantage is that you can't see your HUD effects a lot of the time. All the important messages that pop up are all off on the side of the screen and you'll often miss them. So having an option to adjust them would probably be a good idea. I don't know if it's possible though. I think it could introduce a world of bugs to the game because I'm pretty sure a lot of those values are hard-coded and set in a certain spot and cannot be changed. I don't know. This is one that I think they should just add, but they should add female player characters. We haven't seen it. I don't think it's coming. They are very focused on realism from what I know. And if they do add a female character, they'll have to redo the arm and hand textures, and that would take a long time. Because they're a small studio, I'd give them a pass, but I think a lot of people would like that. The next thing I would like them to add is more storage options. In the forest, they didn't have like an additional bone bag so you could carry more bones, which was quite frustrating at times, but also things like you couldn't store skulls without a catapult. I do like that they added that, but there was no option to store ropes, and you could only carry a certain amount in the forest. I believe it was 4. It's quite limited. Even just having a hook on a wall that you can hang ropes on, and it could really add to the aesthetics of the house. You know, the amount of times I say aesthetics, and I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right. But yeah, I'd like more storage options. The next thing I would like to see is a motorized zipline tool that you can attach to a zipline and go up the other way. I know that Ark has one, but it looks like you're sitting in a baby swing at a park, and I think I got told that BioShock Infinite had something similar, but I couldn't find any footage of it. I do have the game, but I don't want to play it for like an hour and a half to find out. I still have to play another hour and a half to get to the point where I can get the footage to put in a video. I mean, you wouldn't be able to send logs up with it, but if the player can go up with it, I think that'll be pretty cool. The next thing I'd like to see in Sons of the Forest is harder difficulties. Now, I believe them when they say they're done a lot with the AI. The AI does look a lot better. The problem with the Forest hard mode is they didn't really change the AI of the enemy, but more just made them damage sponges. And it was quite frustrating to deal with because unless you got a headshot, they just take so many hits with a melee weapon to go down. And it's not that fun. If you're using a katana in hard mode on average strength for say 20, you will run out of stamina before you kill the enemy with that weapon, which is quite disappointing, I think. I don't even remember what I was talking about. The next thing I would like to see in Sons of the Forest is to make fires more obvious with how much burn length they've got left. It was quite hard to tell because a fire could go from burning moderately to going out. You should be able to see it more clearly that it's dying. So give different stages to the fire, I guess. I don't want them to put an indicator showing how much fuel it's got. Just make it visual. Can be done. Pretty sure it can. The next thing I would like is for effigies to be more useful. Effigies in the forest, if you don't know, are basically static red paint. So it's pretty useless. They look cool. They look intimidating, they look scary, but they aren't useful at all. The next thing I would like to see, I wonder how many times I've actually said something along those lines, is cave difficulty scaling with loot. In the forest, the hardest cave parts have the least amount of loot. So you're fighting mutants in tight spaces, it's very dangerous. But you can dodge so many enemies to get to some of the best loot, like the modern axe. With the exception of the modern bow, that is scaled well. You do need quite a bit to get to that item. Though you can go and get the modern axe and only kill 2 cannibals to get to it. Though to get some story items, you need to fight like 3 Armsies, 2 Virginias, a couple of cowmen, and like 10 or 15 cannibals. It doesn't make sense. The next thing might sound odd, but I would actually like less weapons in the game. Something that happened with the forest, it started to become oversaturated with weapons that didn't actually have a purpose, that just fit in the same role as another weapon. There wasn't unique things about it. I did have an idea that the crafted axe could become a throwing axe. That's an example. There's just too many weapons that do the exact same thing as other weapons. They're just slightly different. Like, a suggestion would be like, if you've got a rusty axe, give it a unique perk that it can destroy stumps in 1 hit. Then it's a useful item that people will go and get. It has limited use, even though it does have max block. Giving it another use is a really good idea. Or like, to give the katana more of a use is to give it a bleed effect, maybe, because they are quite sharp. Or maybe to add damage types to weapons, such as piercing, blunt, slashing, like Dungeons and Dragons maybe. I don't know. Don't want to make it too complicated, but yeah. Either have less weapons or have weapons that actually have a specific role that give them a reason to exist in the game. That's what I'm saying. The next thing I'd kind of like to see is a shelter indicator and fire indicators to indicate to the player that they're warm or they're gaining warmth, so they're drying or that cold's being removed, or to show that they're under shelter. Basically just say that where you're standing is protected from rain and weather effects, because you never really knew in the forest, because rain would often go through a roof or a floor. It was hard to tell if you were protected from the element. Next thing I would like to see in Sons of the Forest, we know we're getting ziplines. I want a way to tie up a bundle of sticks and to be able to send the sticks down the zipline. It'll be a good way to move a large bundle of sticks that way. Now, I looked up the term for a bundle of sticks, and I don't know if I can actually show it on YouTube, but yeah. I did like that you could move logs very efficiently via zipline, but you cannot do it with sticks. Maybe it should cost 1 cloth to tie up a bundle of, say, 20 sticks or 10 sticks. I don't know. The next thing I'd like them to add is actually just ladders. I don't know if it's really needed because we've got climbing ropes, but there's something about a ladder that I like in games. I was never too fond of climbing ropes. I don't know why. Probably because it sounded like a lot of effort to climb the rope. And I think from an energy preservation point of view, climbing a rope is a lot more difficult than climbing a ladder. In a survival situation, you do want to be preserving your energy. Another thing I don't really want in Sons of the Forest is a crap ton of healing items. The forest has way too many healing items. It's very rare to be on low health because there's that many in the game. It's so easy to craft them and it's so easy to find them. I think that needs to be adjusted. Now, this is something I think they should add to Sons of the Forest is a non-animated main menu screen. And the reason for this is if you go AFK from your computer and you leave the game running, you don't really want the game drawing a lot of power from your GPU because your GPU will be constantly running. I'm re-recording this because I ran a lot of tests on all the games I had installed on my computer at the time, and the values were very different from each other. These are the resources used on average for all the games I had, though what I noticed is that animated versus static didn't seem consistent, and I've listed them from best to worst. I don't know what's going on here. I guess it's whether the game engine's constantly rendering or something, I'm not sure. I think they should have an animated main menu, but an option to have it non-animated, just in case for people like me who get up from a game, you got stuff you got to do, and you forget you're running the game. You're not just increasing your power bill for no reason, because a game like Ark uses a static main menu screen, yet it used 92% of my GPU just being in the main menu. I know that game is poorly optimized though the worst culprit was Green Hell, which was at 99%. The game's just rendering a fire burning. I don't know why it's using so much. It must be poorly optimized as well. The next thing I think they should add is 3D maps for caves. In Doom 2016, I believe, they have a 3D map, though the problem with having this in Sons of the Forest is whether it's actually realistic or not, because such a thing to map on the go would probably be very difficult. Unless there was like a mapping system that you find, as you explore the cave, you can find a chip that you can add to the cave thing, and then it would fully map it out. Problem is navigating in caves is very difficult with a 2D map. You need it to be 3D. I just think getting lost in caves sucks balls, that's all. And the last thing for this video is boats are too slow, add motors. Now in the forest it's not so bad. What I did was build a houseboat at the corner of the map and decided to paddle it all the way around the peninsula to see how long it actually took, because I had no idea. I was going to estimate, but I thought, no, if I'm asking for this, I need to have some accurate source of why I'm asking for it. So to paddle from one end of the peninsula to the other, it took 20 minutes and 18 seconds, which is quite a considerable amount of time. It shouldn't be a buildable that you can get straight away, but more that you can unlock it in later stages. Kind of like how Stranded Deep did it. And maybe it can create a lot of noise and attract a lot of enemies. That could be a thing to make it a downside. I don't think you have boat motors powered by battery. Maybe in very expensive yachts you do, but that's kind of silly because if you ran out of power in the middle of the ocean, you'd be so screwed. So I guess it'll just be a gasoline powered motor. Now, I think the forest is okay without a motor because the map's quite small, but we're moving into Sons of the Forest. That map is 4 times the size of the forest. To calculate how long that would take on Sons of the Forest, I'm using the forest map, and each line represents a 6-minute trip, so it's 18 minutes. If I was paddling more efficiently, I probably could have got there in 18 minutes, but it's also so I can work it out easier. So each line represents 6 minutes, and that's fine, but if we times the map by 4, and the Sons of the Forest map is a peninsula, it will take around 36 minutes to paddle around it, which is a little bit too long, I think. So my suggestion is to add a motor to the game. The boats in the forest are just too slow. This might be a good solution for it. Anyway, that's it for this one. In the next one, I'm going to cover things that I want in Sons of the Forest. A lot of them are more ideas that might work, though I make good arguments for a lot of them. You'll just have to wait and see. Anyway, if you like this video, make sure you like and subscribe. Cheers.